Karen always hated my boat. Maybe it was because she didn't own one, or maybe it was because she hated seeing other people happy. Either way, she decided to turn my pride and joy into her personal target, and went so far as to claim it was abandoned. Before I tell you how the Coast Guard turned her arrogance into pure humiliation, make sure you subscribe. We share true stories where fairness, dignity, and justice always win out. My boat wasn't a luxury yacht, it was a modest 22-foot fishing boat. I called her the Marlin. Every Saturday morning, I'd take her out before sunrise, casting lines while sipping hot coffee. Those quiet mornings were my therapy. But to Karen, across the street, it was nothing but an eyesore. She cornered me one afternoon as I was cleaning the hole. "You can't just leave that thing sitting there," she sneered. I looked up from my sponge. "It's parked in my driveway. Perfectly legal." "Not for long," she hissed. "The HOA has rules about abandoned property." "It's not abandoned. I take her out every weekend." Karen smirked. "We'll see what the board thinks." Sure enough, a week later, I received a notice in the mail. Violation: abandoned vehicle/boat on property. Please remove within 14 days or face fines. I stormed inside, waving the letter at my wife. "They're calling the Marlin abandoned. Can you believe this?" She frowned. "That's ridiculous. Everyone sees you using it." But Karen wasn't done. She began snapping photos every time I left for work, then presenting them as evidence that the boat was never moved. One morning, I caught her crouching by my driveway with her phone. "Karen, what are you doing?" I demanded. She straightened up smugly. "Documenting violations. This'll all go to the board. That boat's a hazard." "A hazard? It's a fishing boat, not a wreck." "You'll regret ignoring me," she said coldly. The HOA fines escalated quickly, $100, then $300, then a threat of towing. That's when I decided enough was enough. "Maybe it's time to bring in a bigger authority," I told my wife. She raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "The Coast Guard." I knew the Coast Guard handled maritime registration and safety inspections. So, I picked up the phone, explained the situation, and asked if they could verify the boat's condition and legal status. To my surprise, they agreed to send an officer. The day they arrived, Karen was waiting like a hawk. She actually crossed her arms on the sidewalk as the uniformed officer stepped out of his vehicle. Finally, she cried, "You're here to remove that junk heap?" The officer frowned. "Ma'am, I'm here to conduct an inspection." "Who owns the vessel?" I raised my hand. "That's me." Karen sneered. "Good luck, officer. You'll see it's abandoned trash." But the officer spent the next hour checking everything: registration, condition, maintenance. He even stepped aboard, tapping the deck and peering at the engine. Karen hovered nearby, muttering. Finally, the officer turned to me. "Sir, everything checks out. Registration current. Vessel seaworthy. No violations whatsoever." Karen's face turned crimson. "That can't be right. It never moves." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof of abandonment, ma'am?" She sputtered. I see it every day." He shook his head. "That's not evidence. This vessel is in excellent condition. It's not abandoned." I couldn't help but smile. "Told you, Karen." But this was only the start of her embarrassment. The officer wasn't finished. He pulled out his clipboard. "In fact, sir, I'd like to note this vessel is a good example of proper maintenance. Mind if I file a commendation for responsible ownership?" Karen's jaw dropped. "Commendation? For that piece of junk?" The officer looked her straight in the eye. "Ma'am, this vessel is cleaner and better kept than Most I inspect. You should be thankful your neighbor sets such a good example. The crowd of neighbors who had gathered chuckled. Karen's face went scarlet. 2 days later, the HOA held a meeting. I walked in with the Coast Guard's official inspection report under my arm. Karen was already there, fuming, whispering to her allies on the board. When my turn came to speak, I set the report down with a satisfying thud. This is from the United States Coast Guard. It states my vessel is fully legal, maintained, and in use. If the board wishes to argue, I suggest you take it up with federal law. The room went quiet. One board member cleared his throat. Well, if the Coast Guard says it's fine, then there's nothing further to discuss. Karen shot up from her chair. You can't just let him win. That boat. The president cut her off. Karen, sit down. This matter is closed. The smirk slid off her face. For once, she had no comeback. From that day forward, neighbors stopped listening to her rants. Some even congratulated me. Didn't know the Coast Guard gave commendations, Jim from next door chuckled. Neither did I admitted, grinning. But it sure shut her up. Karen avoided me for weeks after that, glaring every time she saw me towing the boat out for another fishing trip. Her threats carried no weight anymore. The real victory, though, wasn't just the inspection report. It was the message it sent: bullies crumble when faced with real authority. Karen's gossip, her photos, her intimidation, it all vanished under the weight of a single official document. The HOA backed off completely, even amending their rules to clarify boat storage guidelines. In a way, I'd helped everyone in the neighborhood, not just myself. One evening, out on the Marlin, the sun setting in streaks of orange and gold, I thought about it all. Karen wanted me humiliated. Instead, she was the one exposed, embarrassed in front of the whole neighborhood and silenced by the very authority she tried to use against me. Sometimes the best revenge is letting the truth speak louder than lies. Karen tried to paint me as careless and my boat as abandoned. But with patience, proof, and the right help, the truth sailed her arrogance straight into the ground. And the best part? Every time I fire up the engine and head out to sea, I know Karen is watching, reminded of the day the Coast Guard proved her wrong.